did a presentation on monitoring of sub pumps, and the issue that the customer was having is that every morning when they showed up, they have over 100 wells running on submersible pumps, and every morning was a horror show because they didn't know what was running, what was not running, and it all affected their productivity. So here was their problem. They would show up to the plant, and an example would be a 100,000 barrel a day well. Now that's mostly water, only gauged 85,000 barrels. And the big question was why? And it would require a massive amount of engineering effort, spreadsheet analysis, calls to determine when and where and why a pump went off production. And you can imagine with 100 wells, this is a massive problem that these wells are running 24 hours a day. Okay, so you multiply 15,000 barrels a day times 100 wells where they're off. You know, if you could just correct this in 30 minutes, your service is immediately paid for. So we described to them the WellCaddy way, and it's a community of online operators who are measuring and monitoring. And what our basic theory is, let the robots collect the data to do the busy work, and let your key employees, which are, by the way, in this world, all of your employees, do the critical thinking. Use the computer that resides between their ears to do the critical thinking, calculation, and adjustment. And leave the spreadsheets, leave the data collection to the robots. Instead of once a day, hey, every 15 minutes, and you can make decisions before problems are solved. So what happens? You increase your runtime, which increases your revenue. You decrease your expenses due to downtime, and your profitability goes up. Their big problem was downtime. How can we mitigate that? And you know, WellCaddy provided it's not instantaneous, but it's every 15 minutes with alarms. And you know, the operator was doing this on a spreadsheet basis, and they were doing a good job. I mean, they've been in business a long time, but they were just wearing their people out. And at the end, they were only guessing at what their problem was. And I like a quote from Apollo 13, the stranded Apollo mission, where the head of mission control, Gene Kranz, said, "Okay, folks, let's get this right. Let's not make things worse by guessing." And that's everything that has to do with WellCaddy. Go from guessing to knowing. So what would be helpful? What kind of information would you, when do you get the information? Is the device going to work? How hard is it to install? These are all questions that customers ask because they perceive technology as being clunky, unreliable, complicated, and expensive. And we've spent 7 years checking those objections off the list. So here, people always say, okay, I agree, I need help. Well, you know, that's, by the way, step one. You need to recognize that you have a problem. Because if you don't think you have a problem, we can't help you. But once you have a problem, call us. Then step three is, before we ever try to sell you anything, we're going to do a site survey, and it's going to involve engineering and field people with your people to get to what your solution is. Then we give you a quote. It's a firm quote. There's no bait and switch. We've analyzed what your problem is, and if we quote it to you, we're going to deliver it at that price. Then you buy something, and David Lloyd here is on the screen. He takes it out, they plug it in, and oh, by the way, generally 30 minutes to an hour. And then step 7 is, in my opinion, the most important. You learn how to use it. It's a tool. If you have a hammer and it stays in your toolbox, there are no nails going to get driven. And so the next 90 days become extremely important. How do I use this? And that's the other thing we provide. We provide backup technology. Again, we're operators. We know what your problems are. And then once you get past how to use it, then you'll find other situations. And we call that rinse and repeat, right? You're just going to the next well and the next well. And what'll happen is over a 90-day, sometimes it's instantaneous, but over a 90-day period, you'll get better, you'll fine tune, and you'll notice your revenue going up and your expenses going down. And in this world of just trying to break even in 2020, that becomes very important. So we talk about the AmpClamp, but people say, well, what are you really talking about? This is a typical panel box right here. And on this photo, this is the inside of the panel box. This little black box right here is a clamp that goes over the wires that lead to your electric service. And that measures the amp draw. It's non-invasive. You don't have to cut anything. There's nothing special about it. Amp clamps are old technology. But what we did is we took some old analog technology, and then if you look down here, here's the box. You can see a little antenna. This is the board. This is the computer. This is the transmission that sends this information to your website. Here's another photo. Here's a box. It's mounted on the outside, so it doesn't really matter. And you drive out there. The drive typically takes longer than the install. You open the box. You clamp this on. You plug it into the computer. You turn it on, and then what, David? Chime in here. How long does it take to get connected when you actually get it up and running to fill in all your data?
Right. So the first thing, usually after an install, make sure everything's hooked up correctly. Make sure the power's turned back on, and that will activate the device. And then it's not long at all. I mean, we're talking a matter of seconds before you have your first data point on the website, and that will start to start to chart your information on that.
Yeah, and as you install it, you can log onto your phone right here, correct?
Right.
And standing right next to the device, see what's happening, right?
Right.
You know,
right.
You don't leave the location and wait 2 weeks for the computer analyst to configure your device.
No, and usually with install and then confirm of a few data points being charted, and again, they're once every 15 minutes, that's what takes the entire hour, not the install, but the install plus making sure that everything's working correctly. Usually that can happen within an hour, and that's including some data points already being charted.
And, you know, here's a list of things. This is all going to be available on YouTube, and you can watch this video again. But I think the single most important feature of all of this is not the technology, but is to improve maintenance programs right here. Communication between the office and the field. That's the biggest payday right there. Everybody's singing off the same piece of sheet music. So that's where you affect behavior. If you want to know more about the AmpClamp, you can give us a call. We're easily accessible. This cell phone number is mine directly. Like I said, I've operated for 40 years in the business. We would love to talk to you about what problems that you're having. This is just one of many products that we're offered, and they're all directed to helping operators increase their production, which is revenue, lower their operating costs, and increase their operating margins. So thanks for joining today. We'll be doing more. You can also follow up with us on YouTube.